This video was brought to you by Brilliant, and the first 200 people to use the link below will get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Over the last week or so, the Russian army has focused all of its firepower at the Luhansk Oblast, where the Ukrainian army is holding out in the city of Severodonetsk. While they originally made slow but steady progress, over the last couple of days, it looks like the Russian army has once again stalled. So in this video, we're going to be looking at the most recent developments, why the Russians are yet again stalling, and what might happen next. Since we last made one of these war update videos, the Russian army has made limited progress. As we explained in the last video, it originally looked like they were going to stage a large pincer movement going south from Izium and north from Donetsk city to surround Ukrainian forces, which would have given them control over all of the Luhansk Oblast and most of the Donetsk Oblast. However, their movements over the last few weeks suggest that the Russians have, at least temporarily, scaled down their objectives once again, and are now trying to perform a significantly smaller pincer movement, going south from Robyzny and north from Popasna, to capture the towns of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, the last two towns in Luhansk yet to be captured by Russian forces. In the last few weeks, the Russian army has expended significant firepower taking Robyzny and Popasna, which they were finally able to take in mid-May. Russia relied heavily on artillery strikes, which is why Robyzny now looks like this. And this marks a major change in Russian strategy. Instead of large mechanized assaults, most recent Russian advances have been achieved by basically endless artillery. While this is an effective, if expensive method, it's not ideal from the Russian point of view, because turning a town or city into rubble deprives it of any strategic benefit. Anyway, when Russia first took Popasna, there was an upsurge in optimism among pro-Russian commentators. Popasna is one of the high points in the region, sitting around 260 meters above sea level, which meant that when captured, it was suddenly a lot easier for Russia to stage artillery campaigns against nearby towns, which is exactly what happened. And then, when they took Robyzny, many observers thought that the fall of Severodonetsk was inevitable, assuming that the Russians would move north from Popasna to surround the Russian army at Severodonetsk. However, as tends to happen with the Russian army, things haven't quite gone as planned. While they originally made steady gains from Popasna, their advances have since slowed to a halt. And now, it looks like the Russian army have instead decided to attack Severodonetsk via a full frontal assault instead of an encirclement, with Russian forces coming from Robyzny and Borisovka, a town just southeast of Severodonetsk. Again, this isn't going brilliantly though. The Russians have so far been unable to make much progress in Severodonetsk, and the Ukrainians are still able to resupply their forces in the city using roads connecting Severodonetsk to Ukrainian-controlled territories in Donetsk. And the fact that Ukraine is claiming far fewer Russian losses than they did previously suggests that the Russian advance has slowed significantly, possibly due to logistical difficulties or even a lack of mechanized firepower. That wouldn't be surprising either. In late May, the Pentagon estimated that the Russians had lost nearly 1,000 tanks, which would explain why they're apparently bringing Soviet-era tanks out of retirement. So it realistically could be the fact that Russia just don't have enough mechanized firepower to capitalize on their artillery campaigns. Now, this isn't to say that the Russians won't take Severodonetsk in the coming days. They still have far more firepower than the Ukrainians, and if they can cut off Ukrainian supply routes, then we could end up in another Mariupol-type situation. However, it's nonetheless true to say that the offensive clearly isn't going to plan, and even if they do capture Severodonetsk, it is important to keep this in perspective. At the beginning of the war, Russia wanted all of Ukraine. Now it's focused basically all of its firepower on a small town in Luhansk, with little strategic value, apart from allowing Putin to claim that he's now captured all of the Luhansk Oblast. So, where are we going from here? Well, while Russian forces might eventually capture Severodonetsk, generally the pace of the war has slowed to a trickle. Russia is relying more heavily than ever on its artillery, presumably because mechanized advances haven't gone brilliantly for them so far. And regardless, neither side is making significant gains, which is why everyone is currently focused on a small town in Luhansk. Ultimately then, what happens next will now depend in large part on how the West responds. In the last few days, a split has emerged between Western leaders. On one side, you've got the US, UK, and the Baltics, who remain as enthusiastic and hawkish as ever about the prospect of an eventual Ukrainian victory. And as such, those in this camp have continued to supply Ukraine with arms. In fact, on Tuesday, it was reported that the Biden administration was about to sign off on the delivery of long-range rocket launch systems to Ukraine, which is exactly what the Ukrainians need to counter the new Russian focus on artillery. But in the other camp, you've got the Western Europeans, who've begun to sound a bit more hesitant, with Macron, Scholz, and Draghi all calling for peace talks and holding calls with Putin, without Zelensky, to try and force negotiations. And ultimately, it's hard to see who's right here. While the Atlantic hawkishness might make Ukrainian victory more likely, it also increases the risk of an escalation, and will likely make the already tragic conflict last longer. Similarly, while the Western European dovishness is intended to facilitate a peaceful settlement, it might end up giving the Russians time to rearm and regroup, which is exactly what Zelensky is worried about. Nonetheless, as things stand, peace talks look unlikely. Neither Zelensky nor Putin is particularly keen, and without the support of the US, Macron and co. won't make much of a difference. Ultimately, this means that as things stand, the most likely outcome is more attritional fighting, with significant changes in territory contingent on the amount of aid that the West actually ends up sending to Ukraine. By the way, this video is brought to you by Brilliant.
Brilliant is an online STEM learning platform that teaches you everything you need to know to better understand the modern world. Baffled by investment and finance? Well, they've got courses on maths and quantitative finance. Confused by coding? Well, they've got everything from the very basics right through to quantum computing. Unclear why you're losing millions? Well, there's no guarantee that Brilliant can help with that, but they do have courses on cryptocurrency and gambling. You get the point. Everything you want to learn about STEM is covered by Brilliant. And the best thing is that all of their courses are designed by award-winning instructors and built upon the principle of active learning. So you're gaining STEM knowledge by actually doing it. So if you want to improve with STEM, then you can sign up to Brilliant at brilliant.org/TLDR EU. And the first 200 people to do so will get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thanks for supporting the channel.